One of the things I like to think about sometimes is masculinity and the fact that there's so much debate about it, but I feel like there shouldn't be. Because masculinity, I feel like, is the most misunderstood thing ever, and on both sides of it. Because men see masculinity solely as like a way to prove who you are, prove how you are, right? Like, all of us young men are raised with the idea that we need to be willing to show how much of a man we are. Like, we need to be ready to be tough, we need to be ready to fight, we need to be ready to do all the stupid shit. And women see masculinity in two shades. They see toxic masculinity, which is all the Andrew Tate motherfuckers and all the stupid ass shit like that. And then they see like a chivalrous masculinity that's not talked about, that they don't see anymore, which they don't see anymore because it's almost, I'm not gonna say it's non-existent, but it's not pushed anymore. And it's kind of sad because masculinity used to be way different. That's something that's changed multiple times throughout the evolution of people. But like generally, like a big part of masculinity was like, being brave, being, just like, yes, you have the ability to fight, you have the ability to be violent, but a big part of like real masculinity was learning where to put that violence at. And because masculinity wasn't throwing down at the first person who stepped on your shoe wrong or something. Masculinity was fighting for a cause. Like, chivalrous noble knights would take up swords to go and defend the weak. Like, that was that was where the idea of chivalrous masculinity came from. Obviously, men, real knights never lived up to that. But like, you look at like the samurai class, for example. They're such a beautiful version of masculinity in the sense that, like, yes, they could fight. They were comfortable with violence to a level that is like, it's so ingrained into them, even up to the idea of like, if they are not good enough at violence and they get captured, they will commit violence on themselves. And it's pretty fucking hardcore. They also painted and wrote poetry constantly. Would travel around with other men and have basically gay relationships with other samurai that they would travel around with. And there was like, and they were just totally chill about stuff. And then, like, to me, like, the ultimate version of masculinity, if you want to look at a character and go, this is the perfect masculine character, it's Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. Because what does he do? Like, masculine things. He is a leader. He's a king, right? He is a great fighter. He is, he's able to be violent. He's able to be aggressive. He's able to be assertive with his authority and to put other people under his command, and other people turn to him for leadership. He also sings beautiful Elvish songs and Elvish poetry. Like, writes Elvish poetry to the woman who he is obsessed with, to his, his beloved, his eventual wife, but like, this woman that he yearns for. He, when Boromir dies, what does he do? He doesn't like tell him to tough it out or whatever. He goes and he takes him and he brushes his cheek and kisses him on the head and says, and says to be calm, and to accept this death and know that, I'm going to protect our people. I will save our people. He openly weeps for him. And in no way, shape, or form is it ever shown as, oh, he's weak or anything. It's this beautiful moment where he is taking this person who at one point was actually, they weren't always friends. They were kind of back and forth a little bit. And this person, this traveling companion, he's sad at his passing, and he shows it. And he shows it to him. He is tender to him. When he's dealing with, I can't think of her name. When he goes to Rohan and he's dealing with the king's daughter, niece, whatever she is. And, he's openly respectful to her and her ability to fight. He calls her a shield maiden of Rohan. Tells her to be brave. You know, he is totally okay with her fighting. And he doesn't like diminish her for, oh, you're a woman. He doesn't go, that's not your place. And he urges her to stay with the rest of the people, but it's like, no, you need to be the one to help protect them. If the outer gates fall and the forces of Mordor breach the inner gates, you need to be the one to fight. Doesn't diminish her. It doesn't diminish her ability to fight. Also doesn't diminish her femininity either. Like, you know, accepts her and respects her as she is. All of it. And then even if you go as far as, like, when he goes and he takes up the mantle of king, he doesn't just kick the door down and go, all right, bitches, I'm king, fucking whatever. He wins this great battle. He protects the city first. And especially in the books, like, he doesn't announce himself as king. The other people announce him as king. Faramir proclaims it, you know, how great he is and the things he's done. When he first gets into Gondor, and you know, and he goes and he starts healing people who are injured. You know, it's said in there and other places that the hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and that masculinity is baked into his character. After he's king, he is now the king of Gondor. You remember the beautiful scene at the end of at the end of Return of the King, when the hobbits are there in Gondor on that beautiful balcony up there, and the hobbits, especially Frodo, bows to him. And this man, this masculine man, this force of authoritative nature, goes, no, you bow to no one. We bow to you. And he bows. The king bows. And it's not a hit at his masculinity. It doesn't lessen him as a king. It doesn't lessen him as a man. Because he is showing respect to someone else who's earned that respect. That masculinity, like, parts of that masculinity still exist. The problem is that none of those parts all exist in the same man. And because men aren't willing to talk about it, men aren't willing to accept it. But you'll see it. It's little stuff. It's, you know, the guys who, you know, always make sure that their partner is taken care of, that she, you know, bringing the jacket for her, taking care of her, being willing to be uncomfortable himself so that she is comfortable. That's a chivalrous sign of masculinity. That doesn't diminish him. You know, like, and stuff like that. Like, to me, like, masculinity is not, like, if I'm in a bar and I see, like, the guy puffing his chest and trying to fight people, that's not masculinity. That's fragility. That is a guy who feels like he needs to prove himself. A real man doesn't need to prove himself. A real man knows he's a real man. And that's something that's not taught anymore. And I think it needs to be, because, like, masculinity is something that's within. Like, if you have to put other people down and dominate other people, you're not masculine. You're a bully. And bullies are not masculine. Bullies are bitches. There in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, there's a group called the Mythopoetics, who were, it's like a men's right group. They're the ones who coined toxic masculinity, because it wasn't finished. It was them. And because for them, it was toxic masculinity was a need to be violent and a need to be aggressive. And, you know, it's basically, your masculinity is so fragile that you need to assert it onto others to prove that you're masculine. Like, you know, in order to be the most masculine man in the room, you have to beat everyone else down. And that's not masculinity. And so they would do stuff like, they would, like, go out into the woods and, like, you know, do, like, manly campfire stuff. Like a bunch of men that go out, you know, go camping, build fires. They would take, like, you know, younger kids, especially a lot of their sons, a lot of their nephews and everything, and start teaching them, like, this manly stuff of, like, how to survive in the woods, how to take care of yourself. And they'd be imparting life lessons. Like, they'd be in there reading poetry and, like, writing poetry, you know, and, like, and the idea was to embrace all sides of masculinity. Not only like the ability to be assertive, to be, to be violent, to be these different things, but also to be in touch with your, with what they call the deep masculine, with the, those deep parts, those deep emotions. You should be in touch with your emotions, you understand your emotions. Like a real man is the calm in the storm. And that's something I think needs to come back. I wish that was still around. And like, I try to exhibit that. I try to teach that in my kids, and, maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they won't. Like, masculinity is not a team sport when it really comes down to it. Like, you got to feel it in yourself. You got to know it in yourself. But yeah, I mean, I think about that stuff a lot because, spend enough time online, doom scrolling through reels, and you're gonna come across fucking this Andrew Tate bullshit. These guys who, like, oh, real men work out and real men don't do this, or real men don't do that. And it's always like the most superficial shit you've ever seen in your life. It's so retarded. I know I shouldn't say that, but I'm gonna call it that. It's so dumb. And yeah. And the problem is that because of the way the internet works, all the young men in the world, that's who they're turning to. Because they'll Google how to be a real man. And they'll get some guy with this ridiculous workout routine. Or they'll get this guy who, like, his entire life is hustle culture and all he does is make money. And he doesn't have relationships with women because that just distracts him from what's important. And they're hollow inside. These are guys who, they're either liars or they're lonely. And I don't know which is worse, to be a complete liar and grifter or to be completely alone. See, I don't know. I've tried to learn what masculinity is, and I think it's be like Aragorn, man. Be virtuous, be honest, be brave, be just, be loved, and respect people, respect each other, and don't be trying to pop off at the bar and fucking fight everybody. That's not masculine. I don't know. That's where I'm at today.